This is going to be our last episode in the Crimson Kick Guitar series. I'm so excited. This guitar sounds amazing when you play it, but it desperately needs some fret work. I'm going to show you a few tricks that I do when I do a fret level and dress that I haven't seen anyone else out there doing. And it all comes from my background in body work on automobiles and the thought about how you should sand things that are radiused. So I'll share those tricks with you as we go along. And just kind of a couple of quick notes. We're going to use a fret press to push down as many of these frets as we can. If we get a little bit of spring back, which I'm expecting a little bit of it, we've got some super thin super glue here, and we'll put that just right under the fret, clamp it down, hold it until the super glue sets up, and then let it up, and hopefully that will keep them in place and allow an easier fret dress. Our first order of business, if this were a customer guitar and we didn't know whether we were going to do a full fret level and dress, would be to use the fret rocker and listen. You span 3 frets with any flat side, and you just listen to see, does it rock when you put it across those 3 frets? And like that fret there, the answer is yes, so that means the middle fret is high. So if this were a customer guitar, we'd go all the way down and we'd find those. I've already done that, and I know that there are high fret and fret areas all the way through the guitar. So I'm going to level and dress the entire thing just to make sure I've got it all. The second order of business is to use a notched straight edge, especially on one that has frets that are all over the place. Use a notched straight edge, and I'm going to use my 25-inch scale because this is a PRS scale guitar, and it's got just a slight amount of back bow, which means we can release this a little bit. And I'm looking for light under the notched straight edge. That looks really level to me. So just over 1/8 of a turn there, maybe closer to 1/4. And we've got really good coverage across there. So that means the fretboard itself is flat. So when we start pounding and pushing frets in, we know as we level, the frets will be parallel to the surface of the fretboard. I'm getting ready to press in the frets here that are high, and maybe you can see some of those down the neck. One of the things I did was check the radius of the neck. PRS guitars are usually 10-inch radius guitars, but as you can see, the top of this gauge is a little bit high in the middle. And if we rotate it around to the 12-inch radius, that fits a lot better. So this is a 12-inch radius fretboard. A little bit of a surprise there, glad I checked. So that means we need a 12-inch radius call in our fret press. I hope everybody can see this fret is just a little bit high in the middle. And we're gonna first take a little bit of acetone on both sides of the fret. And this is just to get it clean and make sure if we're gonna glue it here that the glue is gonna stick. And we've got some super thin, some very thin super glue here. And we're just gonna put a little tab here, here, and here, both sides of the fret. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to press it in, hold it for just a second, and then we clean up with a little acetone after to make sure the glue doesn't stick to the fretboard. If you do have any glue that sticks to the fretboard, you can always clean it up with a razor blade. Sweet redemption, I would never let you down. Will it ever get sunny? Oh, I wonder, honey, baby, how you make me sway. I use the fret press for the first 12 frets up to and including this guy. And then the guitar, since it already has the neck glued on, won't fit into the fret press. So we're kind of on the ground doing this. And I do like to use a Luxo magnifier for this type of work, just so I can really see, is there a gap? Am I down flat? Now, when you start hammering frets in, it gets a little bit more strange because you can't really hold them down. So we are going to super glue these. There's not really any terrible ones, but there are a couple here toward the end of the fretboard that are sticking up a little bit. So we'll hammer all of these down and we'll glue them as we go. When you hammer frets, you need to really support the neck, otherwise the neck will just bounce. So if we were just going to use a neck workstation and put it up here at the nut or somewhere down the neck, yeah, you can support right under the fret, but when you get into these guys, it gets really difficult. So I do have these neck cradles, and they have adjustable feet on the bottom of them, and you can dial them in to perfectly support the neck as you go. And I just got to make sure I got it back in the right spot. I think I do. So, oops, nope, there, right there, right there. So that will do a really good job of keeping the bounce back to a minimum. The other thing you'll notice is I have felt on mine and not cork. There are a lot of other companies that use cork, and cork will actually bounce a little bit. So just trying to use a material that is a lot stiffer but still protects the finish on the back side of the neck. You guys are going to get to see what I see for just a second here. I've got a 1.5 feeler gauge here. Hopefully you can see that through the magnifier. And I use it to poke underneath the frets and make sure either that they're seated or that they need work. And all of the frets above the 12th, which I've already pressed in, have a gap that needs attention. This second to last one has just got one little spot on the treble side. The rest of it's pretty good. Other than that, they all need to be hammered in. So we're going to do a little super glue, a little hammer, and a little praying.
Protection, I will always be around. Will it ever get sunny? Oh, I wonder, honey. I'm tired of being in the line. You say it will. I'm caught in your addicted brain. You say it will, yeah. I'm causing the
For the taping of the fretboard, little pro tip here is put at least one edge on before you start the tape down the fretboard. And that way when you're done, you can actually lift this and it pulls all the tape off at once. You don't have to do both sides if you don't want to. You can just do one. But yeah, a little pro tip for you there. We need to mark the frets now, and you can use any color marker that you want, but I would recommend blue. Blue just stands out. You can see it really well. Black sometimes on a shiny fret just looks like a shadow line. Blue is definitely, you can tell the difference. The reason we're marking these is when we start sanding, the mark is going to be our reference. It'll tell us whether or not the sandpaper has touched the top of the fret. So as you'll see, you want to keep sanding until you've cleared blue off of every single fret down the fretboard. And when you do that and the entire sanding beam is touching the entire fretboard at one time, assuming you have a very level sanding beam, then you'll have a very, very level fretboard. So a couple points of order there. We are fully supported underneath this neck. I see people do fret leveling jobs just using like a neck rest or something along those lines, and you'll watch as they sand and the entire fretboard will bow as the sanding beam goes along. And it doesn't matter if they have a long sanding beam or a short sanding beam. As you put pressure on it, it's going to make the neck want to bow. And we're trying to get this thing within 1/1000th or 2 of perfectly level all the way along the entire fretboard. That's when you start to get really, really sweet playing guitars, is when they're just dead level. There are manufacturers who use a 6-inch file, and they file in 3 sections, 1, 2, 3. And the idea there is if you do have a little relief in your neck when you set up, as long as you are level within those zones, it should play really, really well. And it will. But again, we're trying to get to the point where these guitars are as sweet as they can be. And I sell 6-inch and 16-inch sanding beams, and for that purpose. So the 16-inch will cover almost every fret in the fretboard at one time. And I can already tell you just the way it's sitting on there, it's got some leveling to do. I think the ends of the fretboard are a little high. We'll see when we start sanding it. I don't think there's a whole lot to take off, so I'm actually going to start with a 400 grit paper. I hope this is a good spot for you all to see this, but we're going to put some 400 grit on our leveling beam, and we lap these by hand on a machinist surface plate. And that machinist surface plate is level within a 10,000th, I believe, across the entire surface of the plate. What is a 10,000th of an inch? It's a 30th of a human hair. It is dead flat. So when we level these sanding beams, we take them and we lap them in, and they are perfectly flat to that surface plate. So that will translate onto your frets. And what we say is this is within 2 10,000ths of an inch per foot flat, which you definitely can't see that with a human eye, and I don't think you can feel that. Now, here is where I differ from a lot of people. Most guys, and by the way, my nut has been removed. Most guys will take their sanding beam and go like this. And in the automotive body shop world, if you have a crowned panel and you have a sanding block, you don't want to go with that crown, you want to go with the radius, because the flat part of your sanding block will follow that radius and make it smooth and not faceted. So when we're looking at a guitar, if I sand the frets in this fashion versus this fashion, I'm not going to facet them. So this way you're going to facet, and it'll be small facets and you can take them out, but they'll be faceted. If you follow this way, it'll make everything nice and round and radiused all the way along. Now, you can tell me I'm crazy, you can tell me that's stupid, whatever. In the automotive body shop world, we always crisscross. So we go like this from one corner to the other, and that keeps you identifying high spots and low spots as you go. So I said before I started this, and I'm barely putting any pressure on this at all, just so you know. I think the end frets are high and the middle frets were low, and I'm already seeing some of the end frets coming off. I'll zoom you in here. We can already see this first fret has been sanded along pretty much its entire length, and this one is getting pretty close. This one is missing just a little bit up on the bass side, and then as we get to the middle of the fretboard, these are all low. So we'll keep sanding until we hit them, and then on this end you can see that one's been hit, this one's been hit just a little bit, that one's been hit. So just another minute or so and we should be pretty close. I've got a couple frets right through here and one here that are low. So I've switched over to my 180. It's a little bit more aggressive because we need to take a lot off of a lot of frets to get down to where those middle frets are. Yeah, we're making some progress here. We've got flat spots on all the frets all the way across, so that's making me feel pretty good. And we will do a little fall away on the high part of the fretboard, so that'll get a little bit more attention here in just a few minutes. I put 2 extra pieces of masking tape on the 12th fret, and I'm going to sand in some fall away. So essentially, if your sanding beam rides on that extra tape, it's going to start forcing this one to sand, and as it sands down, the next one, the next one, the next one, they will all kind of sand in order. So that's what we're going to do. And this fall away just gives you that little bit of extra touch at the end of the fretboard, and it's super, super sweet when you get good fall away. You don't have to do this step. It's just one of those things. If you're looking for the super sweet guitar, there we go. We got the fall off, and you can see the high frets. Whoop! You can see the high frets are a little bit wider from the sanding. There's still plenty of material there, so don't get too worried. I've re-blued all the frets again. And I like to use this Hosco, there's the part number, this Hosco crowning file to get everything close. For the touch-up stuff, I like to use my Crimson crowning file. It's just a 3-sided file that has safe edges ground. Nice Crimson style handle there. Then I've got Old Trusty, which is just a Nicholson style 3-edge file, no safe edges. Yikes, you got to have tape down if you're going to use this one. Down here next to the guitar body, you've got to be very cognizant of where your file is and make sure you don't grind into the body. I can't see it in the camera, so I'm hoping you guys can. There's a thin blue strip up the center of each of these. I can see it really good in the magnifier. But these are all done, and now it's time to switch over to sandpaper and start polishing and buffing these out. This is 1500. I don't have any 1000 right now, but this will be okay. It's on a soft hard block from the automotive industry. I'm using mostly the soft side here. So we're just going through, just trying to get the scratches out and get a uniform sheen on all the frets. Here's where we're at right now. I did go back with some 600, and then I used some 1500 and 2000 grit. And reason is there were some scratches in here that weren't coming out with the 1500. Then I followed up with a coarse and fine fret eraser kind of to finish up. So that's where we're at now. Now we're going to polish. frets all shined up, ready to come off. We should be good now. We should be playable all the way up the fretboard. So we'll stick the nut back in it and restring it, make sure it's set up properly, and give it a test play. What do you think? This goes back to that pro tip. If you put the piece down the side, all of these guys come off just much easier. You might have a straggler or two. We all do. Definitely better than picking up each piece one at a time. Am I plugged in? Yeah, I'm plugged in. Just a quick run through. This is the microphone on top of the camera. I do have a 57 down on my cabinet, but I don't have it all hooked up to the computer, so bear with me for the sound quality. But sorry, I'm just trying not to puncture my ears with those high notes. But every note up the guitar neck is now clear. This thing plays like an absolute dream now. Thought I'd have tuned this thing before I turned the camera on. Like that. I had to tip you guys up in the air so you could see me when I get kind of closer. If you saw any tools in the guitar build that you might be interested in, skyscraperguitars.com is my website. You can also find them on Amazon if you're a Prime member. Sometimes the shipping works out a little bit better. But before we leave, we'll just take one last look at this. I do want to say thanks again to the Crimson guys. This was a wonderful kit to put together. We've got Bloodwood surrounding lace Alumitone Deathbucker pickups, Schaller hardware that I have fallen in love with these knobs. These are super sweet looking. Switchcraft 3-way back here, just like you'd find in a Les Paul. Tone Pros bridge, don't like. I'm going to go on record. I don't like this bridge. It might work well if you have an existing PRS guitar, but for the kit build, I would not recommend that to a friend. Tusk nut up here, Wenge fretboard, custom inlay. It's always good to take another look at that. It's the Crow for Ben Crow, the owner of Crimson Guitars. The little plug that we put down in there, the mahogany plug, the African mahogany plug that we put in, Bloodwood back plate there. Man, I love this guitar. It plays really super nice. Oh yeah, strap locks on there. Schaller strap locks. Again, everything's satin nickel, satin chrome, satin something. Anyway, oh, those tuners. Yeah, the top locking tuners there from Schaller as well. Thanks for following along on this build. We will see you on the next one. Take care, guys.